That's a great question. So it's all happening in real time. We don't wait for it to be updated, and so there obviously could be inconsistencies. Um, I think for the type of application we have, it doesn't really matter. So, for instance, there are ways to minimize that. You can turn on sticky sessions and make sure that, in general, a user that comes into the system is going to stay on the same server. So their view of the world is there's a bit of like relativity to it, but their view of the world is going to be consistent with what they see. And so if it's a second later or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, so that's sort of, we take a very loose approach to replication in that sense because there's not a huge cost. If it was financial data, you might want to think differently about how you're caching it, but I think in this case, it's okay.
Thank you for that. Another question is basically asking, in the Whisper application, is it true that Erlang is used for distributed caching only? And why don't you use a generic cache server instead?
Um, well, that's a good question. I think you know, our particularly our needs have evolved over time, and so we've sort of um, developed the caches that we needed as the service has evolved. Um, there's a couple of things that I didn't go into in terms of why we want to have caches per server. Um, you know, it's the way that we actually move things around and we in our popular feeds is depending on a sort of algorithm that um, uh, updates the relative position based on a bunch of factors. And there's some business logic there that it's easier if that's being done on all the individual servers than it is if we have one master doing that and we're kind of hoping that thing's running and kind of updating it for everybody. We